The day before, while riding his motorcycle, Toby crashed. When emergency services arrived at the scene, there was nothing they could do. He was already dead. The doctors at the hospital confirmed what the paramedics suspected, but they were all wrong. The man they buried was still alive. And I know because I saw him yesterday. It happened 4 years ago, but it feels like it was yesterday. I'll never forget the way my mom cried when she heard the news, how my dad put his arm around her to comfort her, and the way my little brother asked me, "Are we gonna go see him one last time?" Toby wasn't just our neighbor. He was a part of our family. He had this idea that if something ever happened to him, we would take care of his dog, a big red Doberman named Diesel. Well, after the accident, my parents went with me to identify the body at the medical examiner's office. They wanted to be prepared, they said, for when I came back home devastated. Instead, I remember them coming out looking even sadder than before, my dad wiping tears away from his eyes. "Is everything all right?" I asked him. "What did the doctor say?" Dad didn't answer right away. "Toby, he's gone," he finally whispered. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Toby. I kept replaying the day he disappeared in my mind. I remembered when I met him. It was the first day of summer vacation, and I was riding my bike down the sidewalk when I hit a bump and fell face forward into the grass. As I picked myself up, someone started laughing. I turned around and saw a boy a little older than me with a goofy grin on his face. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I lied. "I'm fine," I said, trying to sound tough. "Don't worry about it. Happens to the best of us," he said. That's how I met Toby. Over the next few weeks, we spent every moment together. We explored the forest behind our neighborhood, found abandoned cars, had imaginary sword fights, and shared silly jokes. By the end of summer, we became best friends. Then school started and we promised to stay in touch, which we did by passing notes in class and exchanging mixtapes. He gave me tapes of bands like Metallica and Black Sabbath, and I gave him tapes of Hanson and Britney Spears. When we were sophomores in high school, we got our driver's licenses. One night after dinner, we decided to drive around in Toby's beat-up old pickup truck, listening to music, smoking weed, and drinking cheap beer. We passed a field with a fence so low that we could easily drive under it. "Want to see how far we can go?" Toby asked. "Sure," I said, even though I already knew what he was planning. We drove onto the field. The soft grass crunched under the truck's wheels, and soon we were at the other side. We laughed so hard, feeling invincible, not caring about anything except the freedom that we felt in that moment. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, police cars appeared. Their lights flashing, their sirens blaring, blocking our path. I said, hoping I wouldn't get suspended from school again. What I didn't realize was that the field we were driving on belonged to an Amish community, and the cops were there because they received a call of trespassing. "Can you believe this?" Toby asked, still laughing, as they cuffed him and towed our truck. "This is going to be on my permanent record," he said. But it wasn't the only thing that was going to be on his permanent record. Soon after, he dropped out of school. I begged him to stay, but he said he was done with that life and wanted to join the Marines. I watched him leave for boot camp with a heavy heart, knowing that I probably wouldn't see him again. A month later, I was hanging out with some friends near the river when I heard a commotion. There was Toby, standing on the bank yelling at a Marine recruiter. He was screaming about how the recruiter lied to him about the training and how he wanted to come home. Then he jumped into the river. My friends and I ran over and dove into the water. I managed to grab onto Toby before making it to shore. To this day, I don't know how long I held him or how he managed to pull himself out of the water. All I remember is the look on his face, how wet and exhausted he was, and the relief he must have felt when I reached for his hand. Afterward, he stayed at my house for a couple of days until he worked things out with his superiors. He ended up staying longer than planned and eventually decided not to return to boot camp. Soon after, he moved to another state with his dad, promising to visit. But 2 years passed, and I didn't hear a single word from him. Then out of nowhere, he called me last month. We talked for hours. He told me about his plans to start a construction business and how he missed our friendship. He said he was coming home for Christmas, and I was so happy to hear that. But 3 days before he arrived, he texted me that he had car trouble and would be delayed. Then 2 days after that, he sent me a text saying he made it to town, but he wasn't feeling well and needed to rest. That was the last I heard from him. Then the next thing I knew, he was dead. Now, whenever something bad happens, my mom always says to look on the bright side. She says things like, at least he died doing what he loved, or at least he didn't suffer. Well, I appreciated the sentiment, but in this case, none of it applied. During the funeral, I remember everyone talking about how great Toby was, how he always saw the good in everything and everyone. I nodded along as they spoke, but inside I felt numb. When they lowered the casket into the grave, I thought about how his dad would have to carry on without him. I imagined how heartbroken his mom would be when she opened Toby's bedroom door and no one was there to greet her. How his dog Diesel would run up to his empty bed, whining for his boy. And I thought about how I would have to explain to Toby's little sister that he died and wouldn't be coming back. As everyone filed out of the cemetery, I lagged behind. I stood by the grave for a long time, talking to Toby, telling him about my day, about my dreams, about how much I missed him. I swear I could feel him listening on the other side, how his spirit was there with me. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to accept that he was really gone. Then when I finally returned home, I noticed something odd. On the kitchen counter was a photo of Toby and me taken at his 16th birthday party. I remember that day so well. His dad surprised him by bringing a goat into the house, pretending it was his present. In the picture, I was laughing uncontrollably. So was Toby. Next to the photo was a note written on the back of a napkin. It said, "Your turn." Then beneath that was a date. It was tomorrow. I tried to convince myself that it was a coincidence. Someone must have left it in the photo album by mistake. But then that night, when I woke up to use the bathroom, I walked past the living room and saw the TV playing a video. I stopped in my tracks. It was a recording of a security camera outside my house. And in the video, I could see Toby walking past my front yard. He was shirtless, had cuts all over his arms and legs, and looked exhausted. At the bottom of the screen was the date. It was the same date that was written on the photo. I tried to tell myself that it was just a glitch, that someone messed with the timeline while recording, but I knew it wasn't true. This was crazy. I mean, impossible. But was it? Could Toby be wandering around, having survived the accident somehow? Maybe. Was that why he contacted me those last 2 times? To let me know that he was okay? Maybe. Or maybe he was trying to tell me something else. Something more sinister. Then the next morning, I woke up, looked at the clock, and realized that it was the date that was written on the note. I quickly checked my phone and found a text from Toby. It said, "Be at the old oak tree at noon." I didn't hesitate. I knew what I had to do. When I arrived at the tree, I scanned the ground and noticed a small pile of dirt. I knelt down next to it and used my hands to brush off the dirt. Beneath it, I found a leather wallet. I opened it and discovered a folded piece of paper. Inside was a map leading to a cabin in the woods. Then I heard a voice. "Hey, you found my wallet." "Nice work," it said. Startled, I spun around, and there he was. Toby. He was smiling, but his teeth were caked in dirt. His clothes were torn, and his hair matted and unkempt. He looked like he hadn't slept or showered in days. How are you alive?" I asked. "You're supposed to be dead," he replied. "I am dead," he said. Then he pointed to his chest and revealed something horrifying. Carved into his skin was the date of his death. I screamed and backed away. Toby stumbled forward, reaching for me, his eyes pleading for help. "Help me," he whispered. But as I took a step back, I tripped on a tree root and fell to the ground. Toby's face fell and he started crying. "Please," he begged. "I need your help. I can't stop running. Please help me." I wanted to, but I couldn't. As I looked into his eyes, I saw something so painful, so heartbreaking that my own tears fell onto the ground. His eyes, they were filled with terror. Not the kind of terror he must have felt when he crashed his truck, but a deeper, darker kind. He was scared of what he had become. And then I realized that Toby isn't the person I once knew anymore. He was a shell of his former self, trapped in a nightmare he couldn't escape. The Toby I once knew was full of life, laughter, and kindness. But now he was just a living corpse, begging for mercy. If only I could have helped him, but I couldn't. I just stood there watching as he stumbled into the woods, disappearing between the trees. And now he's gone again, leaving me with more questions than answers. How did he survive the crash? Why did he wait so long to contact me? And most importantly, what happened to him in those woods? Some might say that Toby's ghost visited me, but I disagree. Ghosts don't leave behind physical evidence. They don't send texts or appear in photographs. They don't walk among us as zombies craving human flesh. I believe that what I experienced was real, and that's why I'm sharing my story, so that others who may be suffering like Toby did know that they're not alone, because sometimes the line between the living and the dead is blurred. Sometimes those we love find themselves on the other side, and sometimes, just sometimes, they need our help.